Good morning once again. We have now returned for another eHealth Summit moment. We are on the second day. We will have a lot of speakers discussing aspects that are relevant for health. Thank you very much if you've joined us now remotely. And thank you for everyone who's been with us right from the start when the Secretary of State for Mobility started this first day, this second day. We will now have a roundtable on a very important subject, which is the Recovery and Resilience Plan, the RRP, and the subject that we will be debated is a closer and more resilient NHS. To discuss this subject, I will ask for the guests to take their seats. We have António Costa Silva, who is chairman of the National Steering Committee for the Recovery and Resilience Plan. Please welcome, and please take the first seat. You are on the first seat. I will also ask Leonor, who's the assistant to the Chief of Cabinet of the Minister of Health. So welcome, and please sit next to António. Two of our speakers already here. I would also like to ask Tiago Gonçalves, who is with us and is a member of the ACSS, which is the mechanism to monitor the RRP. Please take the third seat. And also Pedro Sá Moreira, who is the head of planning and organizational development at SPMS. Thank you very much. Please take your seat. And remotely, we have Teresa Marques, who is a speaker in this panel and is a university teacher and member of the National Monitoring Committee for the RRP. Some are remotely, some are with us. And Teresa Marques, I'd like to thank you for linking with us today. I will now sit down as well. We have all the speakers. The subject is of the utmost importance and very current, and this is something journalists like, and that is why the RRP is very relevant in the field of health. I will begin by greeting you all. Thank you for being here, and I will start the conversation with António Costa Silva, who has a holistic vision of the subject, as you were involved in the RRP, developing the strategy and making a proposal to the government right at the start. We crossed paths at the Belém Cultural Center when you put your proposal forward. I'd like to ask you the following. The RRP that was delivered in Brussels has a lot of fields, and many times the Portuguese won't understand how it can reach so many segments, so many vital and strategic areas. Do you believe that this plan will bring good opportunities to reinforce the NHS? Good morning. I'd like to greet all my colleagues here on the panel. And you as well. Thank you for inviting me to be here. The RRP can be a fundamental tool to reconfigure the NHS and making it ready for the future challenges. But our democracy overcame the greatest test in its 46 years of history, and the state responded, the NHS responded. Thank goodness that it wasn't privatized as some currents wanted it. Thank goodness that we have a public health service. But the pandemic brought with it a lot of change. One of the fundamental issues that we have in our planet and our life insurance is biodiversity, and this is being destroyed. And this could have repercussions in the future. We need to get ready for this. We have huge demographic changes. We have an aging population, less young people. The disease standard is changing. We have more chronic and degenerative diseases. Portugal is the third country in the OECD with the greatest percentage of a population above 65% with 2 or more chronic diseases, and that is a future challenge. Having said that, I believe that this is an excellent opportunity for us to reconfigure the way the NHS works, and digitization will be at the core of this process. To have operative and interoperable databases, to have patients at the core of the system. We need to have an optimization of all the resources for the patient, and these are huge challenges. When we look at the NHS, many times we still have fragmented responses that is reactive, and obviously this has implications. It could lead to doubling of efforts, it could lead to waste, and it leads to greater costs and lack of efficiency. So I believe that digitization and having these databases, putting the patient at the core of the system, transforming these processes is important. And we cannot overlook also that health cannot be seen isolated. As you said, the RRP has many tools, and one of the goals is to be articulated with other aspects. We have PT 2020, and we have the multi-annual framework. We can't have other investment plans in the field of health that are underway. So we need to combine all this and have this integrated management, and perhaps have a new mental paradigm that will prepare us for the future. This test was excellent, and I think that our democratic societies don't have a dilemma, they have a trilemma. Competition for political power, which is at the core of democracy, the different parties and the different perspectives. But then we have the second side of the triangle, which is the capacity to have decision-making at a political level. And the third, the capacity to promote the common good and create goods. And the pandemic showed that the democratic system was able to articulate all this. There was still a fight for political power. We still made decisions. We minimized risks and controlled the pandemic. And this was done with something remarkable, which is the mobilization of the infrastructure of the country, the know-how that the country has in the field of health. And I hope that this is an excellent example, because today we cannot government knowledge societies from the top down with the traditional hierarchical models of the past. We need to have this bottom up as well with citizens' engagement. I think that this is envisaged in a lot of items of the RRP associated with this transformation. If we all work together, if we are less individualistic, if we build these collaborative platforms, the RRP can be transforming. Thank you very much, António. As was said, this pandemic forced all the institutions to relate with each other. Sometimes there was opportunity, but people didn't want to. And this pandemic led to this very important intercooperation, managing skills, managing data, which are fundamental for the pandemic. There was also decision-making, and now it's time to ask Leonor Abecasis. Throughout these days, we've been speaking a lot about the RRP and the transformation in the field of health. But if we had to pick a priority in decision-making, what could they be from now on? Well, thank you very much. I'd like to greet everyone in attendance and let you know that health is a very important factor for social development, for economic and individual development. It is also essential for the quality of life of the population, and bearing in mind the challenges that have been addressed and what the pandemic showed us. Decisions, the RRP, which isn't just about political decision-making in health, that is one of the tools, but it's not the only thing. The role is to focus on the 3 levels of care: primary health care, because of their focal role in the NHS; hospital care, taken the differentiation and the weight that they have in the sustainability of the NHS; a strong investment in the national network for integrated continued care, and the national palliative care network, taking account obviously of the aging population, how these people are more dependent, and the sort of diseases they have. These don't come just from aging. But how can I say this? We have this added pressure, of course. And then we also felt that it was necessary to invest in mental health, given the importance that it has nowadays and its impact in people's quality of life and also digital transition. These two last points cut across everything in the NHS, but was seen as priority to, in fact, make the NHS more resilient and more robust, and offer this this idea of the citizen being at the core of the whole system. I will ask our speaker, Teresa Marques, to join the conversation remotely. I believe you can hear me well. We'll add Teresa to our discussion. I'd like to thank you for being here, and I would like you to give a few remarks on what's been said here on the stage and ask you about the major priorities that this plan needs, so that health is at the core and for the patient to be at the core also. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm very pleased to be here and to reflect not just on the patient, but patients associated to the territories where they reside. Given this aging population, this good news of being able to live for longer, this means that we will have an aging population that will live for longer, and this population in the future will need more care. Whether it's preventive care or curative or healing care, so to speak. So there will be demand. The patients will live for longer and have more problems. And we have another problem associated with our human resources. Our human resources have also been getting older, and the system finds it difficult to have enough human resources to match the demand in these services. So these new platforms or digital access is fundamental and essential. It is something we spoke about in the past, telehealth, and the importance of the networks, the district networks, to improve access to healthcare. But today we feel that with the pandemic, it was crucial. Our confidence in the NHS was fundamental. And there was this possibility of being closer to the patient. It was a place where we learned, we had a room to learn, and the RRP will bring a series of investment. But it is also a huge challenge institutionally. Society needs to be organized because this infrastructure or these investments do not solve the issues at the onset. They help to solve the issues at the onset. We need an NHS that is associated with all the municipalities, the institutional core in the territories, because we know that the populations don't have equal digital access. So we have a series of infrastructures, of governance networks to set up these connections and this access. And these are fundamental. We need to drive them so that we can reach the patients, because some patients don't have this accessibility, whether it's physical at the moment, but we are also talking about digital access. There is a digital divide. So we need to create a structure in society that will enable everyone to have access, whether in the cities or lower density territories, because the more aging population has less digital resources, less digital capabilities. And so this organization or this preparedness for this new paradigm in health which we all believe is something that we all believe in. Human resources now believe much more in telehealth than they did in the past. And we can also say that we, as patients, the pandemic brought us this knowledge. We want to have access to healthcare, and the digital platforms at this time of pandemic allowed us to have a more effective response. And it is in this new paradigm that we need to work in the future. Without doubt, there is a confidence here that was reached during pandemic in all the fields, and health is one of them. There are great expectations with regard to the RRP. And now we will pass on to Tiago Gonçalves, and I will ask you, given what has been said, there's a great expectation here. There are many areas here that need this tool to follow their path. With this plan, what can citizens truly expect with regard to access and efficiency in healthcare? Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the invitation by SPMS to be here, and the Central Administration of the Health Services. Greet my colleagues. 1.3 billion euros to increase our capacity to respond, to have more important primary healthcare that can integrate the other care that the NHS has. The NHS is essential in providing care. And ACSS wanted this, in terms of coordinating this, we are committed to developing the implementation of the plan, specifically the results, because the RRP is very much results-driven. And at this moment, we have 15 interventions to qualify and modernize. We need to modernize facilities in healthcare units. That is investment on the ground. So this commitment that is very much present, and which the pandemic, because of its challenges, drove and moved forward, this challenge is a historical commitment, because ACSS was 14 yesterday. And we want to have sustainability, efficiency, improve access to healthcare. And it's important for this RRP to be implemented, enforced in partnership with municipalities, local governments, and other bodies of the Ministry of Health, so that we can respond to the Portuguese every single day as we have done so far. It is a fundamental instrument that the 24th of April revolution gave to the Portuguese population, and we have a commitment here, a higher commitment. We have several projects focusing on responses to patients. Do you want to give concrete examples so that the audience can understand? I think it is very important to tell people that one of the measures envisaged in reforming primary healthcare is to have more services and fields of intervention with integrated diagnosis centers and low complexity diagnostics mechanisms. So we want to respond to the current needs, and that is what we are working on to enforce the plan. It is work underway, yes. We're talking about significant investments, but we are also confident to know that one of the advantages of the pandemic was to enable us to identify challenges and the capacity for mobilization of all NHS agents. Thank you very much. You explained this. And how does the RRP go into this with the funds used for digitization or the digital transformation of healthcare services? This bazooka, as is so often called, how will it change those services? In terms of the digital transition of healthcare, it has a schedule for 2020-2024. We're talking about 300 million euros to invest in increasing resilience of the data network, to increase the quality of services. The pandemic gave us a huge challenge with regard to monitoring systems. We wanted to avoid hospitalization that isn't necessary, outpatient work that isn't necessary. So remoting patients, simply digitizing the communication channels, reducing the number of contacts in person. All of this is very important to channel scarce resources. They will always be scarce, as has been spoken, because of the demographic changes. So this mobilization of resources should be channeled to what is truly essential. Obviously, we cannot overlook the significant role that healthcare professionals play in this transformation, because we need to innovate work processes. We need to reinforce the exchange of information, and an RRP is a huge lever that will help us to achieve those goals. We are confident. We are also aware of the challenges that lie ahead of us, but we will do everything we can to reach them. We know that the Portuguese didn't always feel they were at the center of the priorities, so it's good to hear this. This didn't always happen. Pedro Samoreda, this digital transition in healthcare, does it have the capacity to shift this paradigm? And can you persuade the Portuguese that there is a change on the way, or is just a financial envelope that will be given and everything is the same? What is your estimated impact for this? Good morning, everybody. I'd like to greet my colleagues and say that these measures that are part of this investment, the I6, which includes the NHS, is above all was carried out because of a diagnosis through civil society and a series of fundamental players from the scientific and technical services, universities, academia like we have here, but all of those who are part of the ecosystem. We're not just talking about the NHS, we're talking about everyone. So it means everyone is required together, yes. In addition to this diagnosis, these diagnostics and what the pandemic gave us, I think we should need to highlight that there is an investment associated with meeting a specific goal, which is the digital transition of health. The first pillar is the reform of the of health data. And there are concrete initiatives which range from replacing computers to reinforcing the central infrastructure, increasing cybersecurity for local networks, and also having a data lake. We want one that is universal to the NHS. The second priority, or the second pillar, is a reform of the information systems for patients, for citizens. How can the patient or the citizen benefit from an omni-channel platform, i.e. not having to go to many places to get the information? So it's streamlining it, like we have a single counter. Yes, like we have in other areas, but you have more features, more digital service, and there is no need to going to many places. It is almost a one-stop shop. So from this perspective, we need to reinforced in the new tools that telehealth has allowed us in dematerialized contexts, like the implementation of the NHS 24 counters throughout the country in this logic of integration. In addition to this, we have the reform of the information systems geared towards healthcare professionals. We 109 million euros. The 300 million are to be used between 2020 and 2024, and it's for the exchange of knowledge for the people on the ground, and also having information systems that are cut across the board between all the types of care. The last pillar, which is not least important, which is to have interoperability and registers. For example, medical devices and prescriptions. We are talking about a global dematerialization of these resources, which many times seem to be all over the place, and we can have them in one single place. In terms of impact, and I think that that's what the audience wants to know about, how long can a patient save with this one-stop shop? How much can they save in health? We want specific impacts. What do you estimate in your analysis? What can you share with us? There is an estimated direct impact and an indirect impact. In some, it was quantified specifically in terms of how citizens can benefit, and the others are the potential for the system. So we have complementary means for diagnosis, so people do not need to repeat a test and can have a test that was used for something else, say the previous week or the previous month, for instance. I think that the main impact is that many of the needs we've seen over the year can be in one single document. People can identify that this is where we want to go. It is an ambitious exercise. It is one of collective responsibility. It doesn't depend just on the people who are in the leadership process, but also healthcare professionals and citizens who can benefit and identify that this resource can be improved or can be implemented right from the core because it doesn't exist yet. And I think that that is the main impact that we will have in this collective exercise. There will be an impact, Antonio, with regard to territorial cohesion through telemedicine and more digitization of the NHS and the services provided. What cannot fail? As I was listening to Pedro, I was remembering an expression by António Costa Silva when he spoke about the RRP, where it said that if 10% of all this is done, that would be amazing because it is ambitious. What cannot fail in terms of health so that we can reach these goals? Thank you very much for the question. Like Antonio Gramsci, who said, I'm an optimist in will and a pessimist in intellect. And we know that sometimes we have huge plans in our country and then we find it difficult to implement them. But we cannot fail and we need to change this. Territorial cohesion is key given the strategic vision. I think all of my colleagues here will know more about health than I do, but in a dialogue with many actors and with citizen platforms and decision makers, I put primary healthcare at the core of my proposal, and I think that is where we can play. And this has to do with territorial cohesion, and there are 39 new mobile units in the RRP to provide primary healthcare, and this is very important and can cover areas of the country like the ones that are so-called low density. My friend Teresa doesn't like me saying low density, but these are the territories that are further away from the coastline, and we need to pay attention to them. There are 90 new medicine units in the PRR, and they need to be implemented. When I was preparing the strategic vision, I understood that it is important to give diagnostics means, for example, for taking blood tests and having imaging in the various healthcare units. I'm not saying in all of them, but we do need an analysis of this. And in the RRP, many of these centers will have emergency devices like defibrillators, which are very important because every single life we save, especially when we are far away, life is sacred, and we must avoid mortality, which can be acted on effectively. So primary healthcare is at the core. That is one of the greatest investments of the 1.3 billion euros to reinforce and consolidate primary healthcare, connecting all of the territory. And then the continued care 5,500 extra beds, for instance. When you look at palliative care, 400 extra beds. A lot of aspects of the RRP are functional, and this is about changing the lives of the Portuguese in the cities and inland. Public services need to provide these services in various areas of the country, and that is a fundamental aspect. The second that I would like to say, and linked to this, is digitization. I think in our country we still have a minimalist conception of digitization. I'm not saying give a computer to people and people accessing the internet. We are talking about going way beyond this, and this is a major concern for me. Why? Because we have the Digital Economy and Society Index, and we are 19th within the European Union. Before the pandemic, before 2019, the number of companies, or the percentage of companies that were using e-commerce, was 17%. Users had basic digital skills, basics, and that was about 50% of the population. And when you're talking about these citizens that interact with the state now, it's 41%, and it's below EU average. So digitization, had this in my strategic vision document. I'm very happy that the government has this in the RRP, which is the rejuvenation of civil service. And we won't be able to have digitization with aging staff. They have given their contribution, they have given their service. It is very important to respect this, but we need to renew civil service, and that is a challenge. How can we attract a new generation of young people with computer skills? As my colleague said, this changes everything. Today we have the digitization of civil services when we can be more effective, when we have databases that are interoperable within the NHS and the whole system. We need to talk about interaction here also with the private sector and the social sector. That is where we discovered the problem with the elderly. We need to reconfigure this and continue managing the way patients go in this system. I think that this is something that we can do, and we can reach these challenges, but they're quite important, quite significant. And I'd like to also note something important here that could change health in Portugal and the relationship the Portuguese have with their country. We have huge potential in health industry. We have cutting-edge medical research, medical investment, and yet we haven't been able to capitalize on this with an appropriate industrial policy where all the players go in the same way. We discovered that old molecules that were used in cancer therapy, that we produced this in the past, we deindustrialized. When we start talking with all the players and mapping out these systems, we realize that in terms of biotech and research, where they played a role in the diagnostics of the virus, we have skills that are very important in our country. With regard to fine chemical synthesis, manufacturing active substances in drugs, and industrial fermentation, the creation of pharmaceutical products, some biopharma, which is a very important line also. And we have companies in our country that manufacture medical devices, some of high added value. If we are able to capitalize on this, we will be able to not just reconfigure the NHS, but we will also be much better prepared for the upcoming pandemics. This obviously is not talking against the amazing response we've already given, but if we are able to combine all of this, in 10 years, our country could be a very different one. And health as a pillar, not just for the provision of public service to the citizens, but also the creation of wealth with these areas.
They all touch the cohesion we were mentioning before, and this cohesion and these measures that allow for it, be it from the standpoint of medicine and industrialization, telehealth, they all cover public decisions. So it's time to pass the floor to Leonor Abecasis, because I would like to hear your opinion on this position that is important from the standpoint of the government to establish commitments regarding the RRP and connect with all these areas. In Brussels, we hear a lot about of this reindustrialization, not to rely so much on China as regards health, and what seem to be political economic topics now are also belong in the health realm. So would you like to comment on Antonio's answer? Well, RRP is in fact a tool that already impacts all these lessons learned from the pandemic. And it's a systemic vision, all these reforms that I mentioned a while ago, and that Tiago continued to, and Costa and Silva also mentioned, touched upon. All these fields, in spite of being very important in themselves, the RRP has the systemic vision, is to have an integrated vision, and with this chance of what we have learned from the pandemic, not to restrict what is on RRP, not was limited to the pandemic or the future pandemics, but we have to build a more robust national health service, more attentive to what surrounds it. Let me add, not also the non-COVID patients who have not had the right attention. Yes, it's not just respond to this pandemic or any others. It's to respond to everyone, turn the NHS into a more integrated response. And in spite of these reforms that we mentioned, and they seem that they're being put into boxes, in fact, they potentiate one another and give us a vision that allow us draw a plan and have a vision of as a system, and give it a relevance as a whole, and integrate all the other sectors. And that's why, in spite of this interconnectedness, I think there are some topics regarding each one of the responses that should always be addressed from their interconnectivity, and with all the other levels of care and all the other responses that we have, we should enhance that what we want the National Service wants to change, keeping the guidelines of it without transforming it, rather bringing it closer to the citizen and making it more resilient. As we were saying a while ago regarding the primary health care, the focus lies in providing better access to service, improve citizens' literacy, and improve early the tracking of diseases, promoting healthy lifestyles, prevention of diseases, and enhancing health. It's also a very important aspect, which gives us a vision of the primary health care, which is more oriented to a resolution, transform primary health care in a way that it can solve all the needs of the citizens, and leaving hospital care to more differentiated and situations, and also emergencies. And given this need to revisit, to transform our primary health care in a more resolutional service, we need to be able to resolve most problems. We have to requalify our premises, create better compounds that better respond to this new paradigm of healthcare providing. In the past, it was just more basic cares. They didn't. Now we want to have a more comprehensive response. We have to qualify our healthcare centers, modernize them, and also it's very important because this is a change in paradigm. But also as regards mental health and hospital care, not just primary health care, which is going over the borders of the institutions and provide health care in the communities closer to the citizens where they are. There's also we have to involve all the players, everybody, not just the tertiary sector, but the citizens proper help to reinforce and build tools for their own health care in hospitals. And as previously said, the aim is to qualify the responses, which is provide the health care that is effectively necessary and in the right proportion. What I can see is what I can take care in the primary health care should be taken there. Hospital care should be there, and integrated care also in the right place. We have to qualify the response and attempt that the responses are the best suitable ones to the needs of the citizens. In hospitals, the RRP allows to transformation, integrate goals so as to restructure the organization, internal structure of the hospitals, improve the articulation of the cares, and involve professionals and intermediate structures in the management of the structure, and center, as I was saying, the responses around the real needs of the citizens, and also always for the improvement of the health care of the citizens. Well, when you do that regrouping and you talk about new skills and rejuvenating with better solutions, more digital, how is that transition going to be operated with the current human capital and the digital skills that are required? Is there any cause for concern? No, there's no cause for concern for the practitioners. All these reforms play an important role because they will provide better work conditions to do what they know how to do best, which is to provide health care to the citizens. The goal of all these reforms, the ultimate goal is, of course, lies on the citizen, focuses on the citizen, but healthcare, providing healthcare is also focused on the people. So we have to create all the responses and conditions regarding the digital transition, or also very focused on the access and the structure of the network. But it has also a crucial pillar, which is the health professionals, then create the conditions for healthcare practitioners to have to do what they know how to do. Their main mission was without duplicating what they have to do in unnecessary work. As I was saying, we need better dedication to people. Once again, Teresa, you were a short while ago mentioned by Antonio, also given your connection to the territory. You're online from Porto, I think. So there you also cover a lot of territory in the north. And I would like to hear your comment, your concern on cohesion, and also what Leonor just said. In short, we shouldn't leave anyone behind. What cannot go wrong? Cohesion on one side and not leaving anyone behind on the other. Well, not leaving anyone behind means that we cannot forget about people, and we must not forget about territory in the first place. So there is a need of creating a program that is cohesive on a social level, but also cohesive on a territorial level. And the lack of cohesion does not occur just on low population territories that have a low population, but also those that have a large population. So we have to think about the care that we have to develop and how we're going to go about it. Depending on the characteristics of the territories and the demographic and social characteristics of the patients in the health service. It's a demanding challenge. It's demanding, challenging. It should involve all of us as a society, because we were one of the countries with one of the highest levels of population aging and longevity. But longevity, this is not on a par with life quality. We have to live longer, but also with quality. So this does not depend on just on the health services. The health services have been more oriented for curing, but we are increasingly worried about prevention, and prevention also are important as regards the service proper. This is an opportunity for all of us to change. We as patients, because we are going to have access to information and be able to reach the services in an unprecedented manner, without leaving our home, but at the same time, it will also allow the health centers to be more proactive. Until now, health services were mostly waiting for the patient. The patient would go to the health centers whenever necessary. What's going to happen now is that the system is going to be interactive both ways. The patient will have more information. The health care services will have more information that will allow the services also to be more proactive. A family doctor will not just wait for us to schedule an appointment. He's going to be closer to us in a system of continuing the health care system. This requires a development at a multi-tiered one, with many players, but also engaging the entire society and changing its mentality. And with these levels of population aging, financially, we cannot efficiently support the healthcare service. We individually, we also, in our everyday life, in our lifestyle, we have to develop our health plan. And it's in this interaction of better access, physical access that we already have, and better digital access that we are creating, and with changes in mindset towards a more active society, a society that interacts better, develops relationships and interactions so as to build well-being and life quality. But in practice, healthcare services, that's what they do, offer to the citizen a better life quality. And for that, each and every one of us, the different players in society, but also us as patients in the health service, we have to change our mindset, our positioning, and we will have to work. This health will have to be. Will have to interact with the school, with leisure, and the way we enjoy the public spaces and even our habitat. There are topics, as you mentioned, that have to be developed while implementing the RRP. The RRP is a tool at our service. We have to change it and add value to it as a society to uphold the life quality of the population. Thank you, Teresa, for your testimony and your answer. You raised a very important topic, which is that of demographics, an immense challenge for the country and for the National Health Service. And I would also add another one, the health in future pandemics. There's also climate change. What can they bring? They can bring new pandemics. We have two major challenges, demographics and future pandemics. How can PRR make the country more resilient to face these major challenges that are knocking on our door? Probably. Of course, RRP aims to empower the SNS and make it more resilient regarding pandemics or any other phenomena, and also respond to the growing needs of the population, such as demographics. I think it's very important to keep in mind that the pandemic brought relevant changes in the way the system is organized in its response, and also in the way the society and the healthcare practitioners reacted. Well, that it was a response given the emergency and the number of deaths we had. Well, I'm thinking ahead because demographics is topic, and the future pandemics will be in the future. Well, looking into the future, not so much at the past, what kind of resilience do we have in the National Health Service? Well, it's important that the investment that's going to be made in to build new units to allow us to have suitable circuits. It's very important to learn lessons from this pandemic, to have the means and the equipment in our healthcare units to allow to deepen the work in multidisciplinary works. It was very important, this pandemic. So we have to learn lessons about our ability to organize ourselves in the future to respond to other challenges. Telehealth was very important, and it will continue to be so. This challenge as regards digitalization and deepening the digital transformation, and therefore there is a set of responses that are being developed, and it's RRP tries to respond to those difficulties in many respects that were brought about by the pandemic, and made clear some aspects that we have to deal with. We have to improve our ability to tackle future challenges. Another important topic is that we have to be able to respond in an outreach manner in territories where there are small populations. There are not many resources, not so many healthcare practitioners to respond to the needs to that population. So the RRP also is also oriented towards outreach, having mobile units, as mentioned here. And I'm glad you asked the question of the challenges posed by climate change. The RRP does not forget sustainability. There are several projects that we have on the RRP that focus on electric mobility, the energetic performance of buildings, so somehow attenuate climate change. It's important to mention that here. That's the way forward that has to be built. And it has, of course, a vision that cuts across the board this very complex topic. And it's in a very complex and difficult setting. We have to be able to provide good health care to the population. That's our aim. It's a crucial tool, as we saw, to dynamize the National Health Service. Otherwise, many of these investments would not take place. Pedro, we mentioned looking into the future. You have planning. You know how to do it. I will ask you a question now, close to the end. It's like a small provocation. Or if the money takes a long time to arrive, you know that public competitions take a long time to be concluded. Until then, what can we do? How can we prepare the health sector to afterwards use this leverage, the oxygen, so as to prepare the future? Well, this exercise, this RRP is a tool, like Professor Costa Silva said, and there are other instruments that cannot be neglected. Portugal 2030 is one of them, but there are other tools. Most of all, this exercise of collective responsibility will make us raise awareness to other programs that are ongoing. So these opportunities are not wasted. We have to add value, and when we talk about initiatives that may have an impact, any measures of the Simplex program, they are also inserted into PRR. They are not isolated because they are on RRP. They are in they have other ongoing programs with other solutions, with different time ranges, time scopes. But and there are many at an RRP that have to be concluded by the end of the year. So execution has to be more responsible, but above all, there's a work that has to be done. We're talking about infrastructure to prepare budgets. They would have to be concluded by January. We all have already have introduced structural change programs, such as buying 22,000 computers for primary care, primary health care. And this exercise has to cut across all areas. So we have to link this measure but we have to see how its measure interacts with the new measures that have other components in the National Service. This collective exercise is the responsibility of all of us, and of course, not wait for the bazooka for that to happen. The ammo has to be distributed across the board. It's almost 12 o'clock, but I can't help asking to ask for a final message. It's not, important to conclude and try to have an outlook on the future. Final words from each one of words, a message, a challenge for the public decision makers. What would you like to say? Well, my concern, and you mentioned this, and my colleagues mentioned that, the energy transition, sustainability, and the climate change, I think that's a core problem, not just for Portugal, but also Europe and the world. If we look at biodiversity, if we look at the book, it's a mass extinction. The extinctions prior is Elizabeth Calder-Till, and we're watching a growing the pace of destruction of amphibious species in the world. We lost 1/3 of coral reefs. We've lost 1/3 of all sharks and manta rays, 1/4 of mammals, 1/5 of reptiles, and 1/6 of birds. That's what we're talking about. This hits the core of sustainability. We have to transform our model of economic and social development. Based on deregulated capitalism. It has to be rethought, and I think capitalist model has already proven that it can generate well-being and prosperity. But when it's deregulated, it causes environmental devastation and inequality in our society. So my message here is that health problems are crucial, but the well-being of the human species will require a great transformation of our economic and social model. It's like a upside-down, inverted Russian dolls. Where the prior model has to encompass the prior one, but it produces devastation of resources and growing inequalities. We have to have a model that Kate Howard from the University of Cambridge calls a donut model. We have an outer boundary, which is the ecological boundary of the planet, the sea that comprehends the city's circular economy, because cities produce an unprecedented rate of garbage, and we must not forget that there's another circle in the donuts. One in every 5 persons is verging on the verge of poverty. And we have to have responses here that have to be linked with all these programs, and RRP is an instrument like PT 2020. Like Pedro said, the next pluriannual frame that challenge our ability to change. We need a holistic vision, and health has to do with all of this. Thank you, António, with all of this. Leonor, a final message that you wish to leave regarding the topics that have already been addressed. The topic is two common places, but I think that express that what we have before is that we all have a role to play in modifying or changing the National Health Service, be it with the RRP or any other instrument that we have before us, and we all have to ensure that we're not leaving anyone behind, in fact. And I think that's the message that we'd like to leave here. We all have to work for that end, to not to leave anyone behind. Teresa, in Porto, one final message on the various topics that we addressed. What would you like to enhance Well, after you said, we mentioned the complexity of the challenge, what will this demand from us? And after talking about the collective responsibility, I have to bring a message, especially let us not miss this opportunity. The upcoming 10 years will be very complex, very difficult. What is at stake is clearly our development. Either we take this opportunity or we will be compromising our future and that of the future generations. So we have to take this on in a collective manner and with great responsibility. Is clearly a need and an urgency. Elsewise, we will once again miss the opportunity to have a society with levels of development that are suitable to a European country. To have 20% in certain regions, 25% of population at the verge of poverty is a very serious indicator. It shows that we have not truly been doing what we should have done. And then we have to focus, rather than just doing, we have to focus on doing well, doing what that is crucial to our development. Thank you, Teresa, very much. Yes, it's a civic scare when it comes to the levels of poverty. Now, yes, Pedro, a final message that I would like to leave is that one of confidence. We are working to execute the RRP, but at the same time, I would like to call upon everyone, all participants that follow this national effort to transform and also contribute with their share so that we can reach the results that we hope to expect to reach. And expectations are quite high. They deserve all the effort so that at the end, the Portuguese people look at the RRP as a crucial instrument to modernize the country and to respond to some of the structural challenges that it has been crossing. Pedro, a final word too. I think there's a key word. I would say it's action. The diagnosis is done. We have a plan. The plan is structured. It's been presented. Now there's a collective endeavor to execute it, but this execution has to be responsible with mechanisms that are already in place. We're talking about transparency. This whole process will be closely monitored by each one of us, as nationals, as patients, and managers and healthcare practitioners, and also business are engaged. It's a collective movement that requires action. Thank you to all the speakers, António, Leonor, Teresa, who is online. Thank you for joining us, Tiago and Pedro. Thank you so much for what you told us here on this stage on the RRP and the National Health Service that can be more resilient and provide a better response to citizens also through this European instrument that is so important. I would use Pedro's expression, action. This is a country that is full of diagnoses, many trackings. What we need now, it seems, is action, and joint action shared by all, one that is tangible to be able to move forward. Thank you to the speakers and the audience since has been with us all morning. In the afternoon, we'll continue with another debate, with more debates. Now we'll have a small pause in the video, and we'll come back in a few seconds. Thank you.